everybody, once again, I'm Jason Salas alongside my digital colleague Ken Nicholas, and this is Trend Spotting, the weekly podcast where we bring you the issues of the day, but more importantly, what you guys have to say about it. This is completely collaborative. We are doing a dialogue, and we want to exchange ideas, figure out how passionate you guys are against the big topics. And Ken, we have a concept, idea, headline, storyline, whatever you want to talk about today that everybody should be really, really excited, angry, passionate about, because we are talking about drugs and crime on our island, two things that nobody wants.
Yeah, the reason why we actually are talking about this topic, we've touched on this topic a few trend spotting episodes ago as well, so it's not new to any of the viewers at home, but we did have an interesting video or interview on our starting lineup show on Wednesday with a recovering drug addict,
Jess Mendiola of Sinania.
And that was a really touching and very hopeful and inspiring type of story. And we also had Chris Barnett's story with in regards to what the MAGA Haga Lou Leon Guerrero said about the drug epidemic on Guam. So we're going to play a quick a video for you of our Your Take segment from yesterday. I kind of touched upon those, and before we get back into this dialogue. So if you have questions about this, please go ahead and add them into the comments.
Okay, hey everybody, Jason Salas here in the Digital Center. Now, everyone knows that there is a problem with drugs on island. Now, our beloved MAGA Haga, Governor Lou Leon Guerrero, said it is a catastrophic problem, and that's what we asked you on Instagram. We asked a poll, and the governor right now, the results are saying 87% of you were saying that, yes, you do agree that there is a catastrophic drug problem on Guam. We want to get your feedback on this, so let us know what you think. We also had a wonderful, very, very inspiring, very moving live stream this morning on Facebook with Jess Mendiola. He was very open about his own problems with addiction. He talked with Sergeant Paul Tapal from GPD and Sabrina. Incredible story. We want you to jump on our Facebook live comment thread right now. Share your own thoughts about this. It elicited a bunch of comments, many of them very, very supportive. Leanne Michelle, actually, Jess's fiance, he shared it. Very, very lovely couple. She says, "So proud of you, honey." That's awesome. Helping him get through that very tough time in his life. Also, Chris Cruz jumped in and said anybody could get off the drug meth. All they got to do is think how to make life better for themselves and for family members around them. The kids nowadays need us older people to show them that we can be someone to look up to for respect. And he makes sure to highlight the word respect. Remember, on our island culture, respect is one of the most cherished virtues we can have. Lisa Tadella actually posted something, and she is one of our top fans, and this is why. She posted a picture. Really, really nice quote. She says, "The path to the future goes through the past. We are what we've done and what's been done to us." And of course, that got a nice heart on that comment. Thank you very much for that, Lisa. Esther Ann says, "I'm so glad I took the time to watch this." That also got some hearts. So again, Jess's story, very inspirational, very inspiring, very motivational. Ashley says, "Your dad would have been proud of the person you have become." Both Sergeant Paul and Jess, they said they're second cousins. They also shared this story about how Jess's father had a very untimely passing, but he's saying your dad would have been proud for you for the work he's now doing in the community to help other people get over addictions. Elise said, "What everybody else is saying, I'm just so proud of you, Uncle Jesse Mendiola," and she tagged him in that too. And Jess is actually reading a lot of these comments. He's responded to a lot of them and says he wants to use his own journey to help people out there struggling with addiction. So he even said, if you have a problem, hit him up on Facebook Messenger. You can find him, add him on Facebook. He would be more than willing, more than happy to reach out to you and have a dialogue, help you out. And lastly, great comments right here. Brian Bautista says, "Keep strong, my brother." And Brandy Hall says simply, "Great interview, Jesse." It was absolutely inspiring once again, and just one of the many streams we have here on Starting Lineup, and we invite you to jump on any of our social media channels. Remember, the poll we have is on our Instagram story. We want to know if you feel as if Guam's drug problem is at the catastrophic level, so make sure you check us out on social media. Let us know how you feel about drugs on our island. Back to you guys in the newsroom. Okay, thanks a lot, me. Good job on that package right there. But no, all joking aside, two interesting perspectives. We have that poll on Instagram. At the time that Asha, who's running the camera right now, and I put that together, it was 87% of the respondents believe that, yes, we do have what the governor is calling a catastrophic drug problem. What's the numbers right now?
So like right now, or at least, well, you know, the story has fallen off the archive. So definitely if you want to take part in these Instagram polls and questions that we put on be sure to check our KOM News Instagram story every day so that you don't miss the 24-hour poll. The poll, by the time it ended, it was 170 people who believed that there was a drug epidemic on Guam, 22 people who believe there wasn't, that it's not an issue. So that was pretty interesting. We have some people. Nate Horn, is this a rerun? No, we were just running yesterday's segment from yesterday's package, and it could
Obviously
seem like
I'm wearing
a
a different
rerun.
shirt.
It could seem like a rerun because we do seem to talk about drugs and violence and crime on the island quite a bit. So,
Unfortunately, Nate, that is the
Yeah.
point, and hopefully we get to the point where we don't have to talk about this. But indeed we shall, because that's why we're coming, and we want to know what you guys, what you have to say, how angry you are at this. You know, like nothing's out of bounds here. We're talking about drugs and crime, so this is something that unfortunately affects so many of us at the family level, at the village level, at all the way at the island level. You know, depending on whether you live in the north, the central, or southern part of the island, like that. Unfortunately, you know, we say this a lot with like different types of diseases. Like, you know, like they say cancer affects everybody on Guam at some level. Drugs, unfortunately, too. Everybody knows someone who has been touched by it. And I've been here at KUM, and I've been involved in news for long enough that we saw when there was what might be considered kind of like a fair weather drug problem, and then it really, really ramped up after the turn of the century, and people were saying that at that point it was an epidemic, and it was to the point where it was a major healthcare concern. It was crime, and you know, public health was getting involved, and obviously GPD and the FBI was getting involved.
So, you know, I want to talk a little bit more about the history of drugs in Guam, at least in the past 25 to 30 years, as that's a period of time that I'm, you know,
Been alive.
relevant with, right? But before we get onto that, I just want to talk about a little bit about Lou's response in Chris's story. I think it's great to see the Maga Haga take a step out there and, you know, assertively say that there are drug problems on Guam and that she's seen the exposure through various ways of getting the drugs, importing them in. I don't know if she really touched upon the manufacturing of certain drugs on the island, but it makes you think, like, man, you know, you know what, somebody told me yesterday, I don't know how accurate this is, but they said a gram of ice in the 1990s, 1995 was $1,000 a gram, right? In 2015 or 2016, a gram of ice was $250. Okay, $1,000 to $250 in like 25-year span, right?
Okay, you're an economics guy.
So, and now
That's very telling.
So, okay, this is 2 or 3 years ago. Okay, we're talking about 2016, 2017. It's $250 for a gram of ice, and today the street value of a gram of ice is $70. $70. That's a huge change in the price of a good, right? Like we're just speaking in terms of economics here, and when you think about that, like what drives the price is just a competition of different sources of the drug to get your hands on, and how much of that product is saturated in the market, right? If it's very rare, if the demand is a lot higher than the supply, then your price skyrockets 1,000, right? And you know, we're talking about 1995 to 2019. There's a huge effect of inflation, so you would expect typically for a product to be more expensive today than it was in the price. But drugs are so prevalent, or at least crystal meth is so prevalent on the island, so saturated in the market, that you can get away with purchasing that for $70.
Yeah, we're not talking about like a fire sale where, you know, it's basically everything's got to go and like it's a company that's about to go out of business. This is actually the exact opposite condition.
You know, I don't know.
This is the actual definition of an epidemic.
It's ridiculous, and you know, I don't know if these numbers are accurate. This is hearsay. I'm just giving you what I've heard. So you know, maybe someone out there knows. Like, if you know, like, how much a gram of crystal meth costs today, let me know. I could grossly be ignorant onto the fact and spouting a number that is really incorrect. But this is what I've heard yesterday: 1,000 in 1995, 250 in 2017, $70, 2019. That number is alarming to me. That is insane. I think marijuana was like $70 a stick in 2000. You know, like. And that's a gram of ice is $70 now. Like, that's, you know, wow.
And
wild.
Okay, so you were talking about the time that you've been awake and, you know, kind of, well, alive and woke, as the kids say, right? Like, you know, aware of, you know, social issues and socially conscious, right? But I'm about 10 years, 11 years older than you are, and I remember in the 80s when they were saying like cocaine was kind of a designer drug, and that's what the Wall Street crowd did. That's what the rich people did, because it was marketed and it was priced a certain way. You know, it was more recreational.
And it's still,
cocaine
is still expensive.
Well, yeah, and then crack cocaine became the much cheaper, easier
Mm-hmm.
to produce. They gave that infiltrated and penetrated in economically distressed communities,
Yes.
and that became a problem for people without so much money.
Sure.
Yeah. So there's that economics too, and the fact that the price has been driven down makes it more accessible. It's probably as you said, it's in more widely distributed supply, and that's a scary thing.
We got some comments here. Nate Horn, it's the judges that keep releasing the people back into society rather than sentencing them to rehab. Also, they give them reduced sentences. Bill Cruz saying, why now though? Drug has been an epidemic on Guam for years. And those are both two great points I want to touch on right here. When I was growing up in the 90s, there was an organization called the Youth for Youth. That was at the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse at the time.
You were part of that, right?
Yeah, now it's changed into DPHSS, right? And this was a prevention and drug awareness campaign which exposed the youth to the harms and the obstacles that drug use and suicide can impact the community. And it was, to me, in the 90s, I already knew that ICE was an epidemic. It was a growing problem on Guam. And, I never got to see it with my own eyes growing up, but I hear like the testimonials or stories as a young kid, 15 years old, 14 years old, and how big of a growing problem it is on Guam.
And see, ICE didn't even exist until like I was in college. That was around like 93, 94.
Sure. And,
we didn't even know about it.
And then you imagine 2-3 years later, it's already kind of blown into something that everyone's keeping an eye on, right? As well as other drugs. But you look at today, that organization is long gone. Or if they even still facilitate in any capacity, it's with no support from the local government, and it's purely on federal grant level, right? Which is, that's a shame. It's a shame that drug prevention doesn't have the same support that it had 20 years ago. And I would love to see that. And we talk about, Nate, you're saying,
He was saying about the judges.
the judges releasing them back into society instead of introducing them to rehab.
I can speak to this a little bit because I've interviewed the Honorable Judge Alberto Lambranda on many occasions, and he is in charge of the drug court. I've had him on KUM News Extra a bunch of times. Really, really nice gentleman, and he always says that the number one goal that they have is to reduce the recidivism rate, which is basically to say that we can incarcerate people for breaking the law. We can hopefully have them realize the error of their ways and serve their time.
Not make another crime again.
Yeah, and not basically go back out into the community and do it all over again, because ultimately the people that bear the cost of that are us, the taxpayers.
Yeah, and
And
that's what he
the whole,
said, right?
Yeah, what's the whole point if you're doing it over and over and over? So they're trying to structure some sort of framework where they can say, let's rehabilitate these people, let's break the addiction. It's so cliche to say, but let's break the cycle of addiction. Let's give them more opportunities so that they don't have to go. And that's what His Honor was saying. You don't have to go out and steal again just so you can make rent, and you can do things so you can be a productive member of society, and you don't have to look to drugs and crime as an outlet just to live your life.
Well, sure. And that's kind of like what Lou was saying. Like, hey, I'm sorry, Maga Haga was saying, I recognize that there is a
She's cool. You can go.
epidemic on Guam, right? That this problem exists, and it exists because of this reason, this reason, this reason. And sure, Judge Lambrana said, like, it is a goal of the courts to reduce, and of the the DOC system, right? To reduce the recidivism.
That is a very hard
That
word
is a
to say.
tough word. I should have practiced that before I came on here.
Okay, everybody in the comments right now, try typing recidivism, and then after you do it, try saying it out loud.
So to reduce that amongst criminals, but
No repeat
Right.
offenders, basically.
But if we look at crimes that are committed recently, who's committed the crimes, you see many people who are out on parole or, out on the warrant for breaking their parole. So these are obviously people who went into the court system, came out, and came back to, doing the same crime or something even more heinous, right? Which tells you that system's failing, right? It's hard to say without real sense of accurate statistics on the situation. I think we have some statistics I want to pull up. I don't know if Asha can pull it up for us. It's this is the clearance rate of Guam crimes in 2013. Because this is the recent one that we could get from the FBI database, right? And if you see here, in 2013, there were 649 new crimes, 346 cleared, clear, meaning they found a suspect or indicted a suspect for that case, right? So 52% clearance rate for violent crime in total. In 23, the murder and manslaughter was like only 9 cases, 6 of which were cleared. 145 robberies, 63 which were cleared. Aggravated assaults, 400. 224 were cleared. And when we look at property crime, the ones where it's more like burglary, larceny, and theft, things of that nature, there were a whopping 4,528 crimes in 2013, 6 years ago. So I think it's safe to say, I really hope that we can see this type of statistical thing now for 2019 to see where we're at, because I bet you this number is way higher than it was now here. But that's not the alarming number. I think the alarming number here is when you see the clearance rate, only 10% of crimes, 475 of the 4,500 property crimes that were committed were ever given a clearance rate. So we're looking at 90% of crimes of property crimes in 2019 or 2013 that went unsolved. You know what I mean? And I don't know what a passing grade is here. Like, I don't know. Is that
like what would be the acceptable
like,
threshold
like
for
what's the benchmark in
exactly like we
similar,
cleared 55%, so that's the mean average.
And of course, like, you know, the statistical information is not without its own bias. Like, you have to take into account certain things. Like, it doesn't take into account the number of suspects that were arrested for the case, just the case that was chosen. You know, so these things can skew the numbers in one way or another. But you know, 4,000 theft crimes, 400 clears. There's a big discrepancy here, and even a small number of 10 to 20 is not going to change the percentage there that much, right?
Okay,
So,
seeing as how you and I are from different generations too, right, on Guam, but I mean, we both grew up here, we're basically from the same streets, we're both from the northern part of the island, right? Would you say, with your peers and, you know, contrasting to my peers, that the drug thing has always been someone else's problem? You know, it affects all of us, we've established that, but would you say, with you and your friends and your family, it was like, if it's a different group of people. You know,
sure.
It may be people who have, you know, from, again, impoverished communities, or it's people who come from history of drug abuse and drug addiction, or it's, you know.
You know, I definitely see how people can feel that way. That if you are not directly impacted by the effects of drugs, as in your loved one or a relative does not use drugs, and you aren't exposed to drugs directly, then it certainly can seem like it's somebody else's problem.
And therefore you don't get involved, and you just pay it no mind.
But guess what? It's definitely not somebody else's problem. It is your problem. It affects you, affects your bottom line, affects the people you live with. You know, all these other crimes that we're looking at in 2013, not even 2019, right? Like, all the crimes that we're looking at now, many of which are drug related and influenced. I think it's alarming. I think, you know, we live in a new age in society where we're pretty lenient on a lot of the things that we accept. You know, passing of recreational marijuana, you know, other types of issues that are probably 20 years ago we would have never seen approved, and now are you know, the norm in society as a whole. You know, drugs still seems to be the thing that, like, well, these heavy drugs seem to be the thing that are always been negative and a detriment to society, yet we haven't found a solution to how to kind of purge them from the community.
I do have a reason why I brought up that specific question, and the reason is this. For those people who would just say, okay, well, you know, my family and I, you know, we've steered clear of drugs, you know, we've avoided, you know, either the temptations or we do things by the straight and narrow. There are a lot of people who would believe that, and, you know, good on you for doing so. But now they're looking to the governor, you know, our highest elected leader, and they're saying, okay, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
You know, this isn't something I'm personally getting involved in, but we realize it is a problem for a certain amount of people, and we want you to attack this. And I thought it was interesting how, you know, context is everything, and, you know, semantics can be very, very powerful. But when she said we're addressing the drug problem, very, very carefully chosen words. Some people I saw on social media didn't feel as if that was strong enough, because in the past, different police chiefs, attorneys general, governors have used, they say, we're going to eliminate the drug problem. We're going to combat the drug problem. We're going to nip the drug problem in the bud. You know, we're going to tie off the drug problem, whatever. Addressing the drug problem, I think it's a strong word because it indicates that it's a good start. She's going to attack this as a policymaker, as a mother, as a citizen. But there were some people that just said, like, I don't feel as if that action word, carried enough oomph behind it.
Sure, and I think,
again, it's just semantics, but
well, and then we have in the previous administration we had the Mandania task force, right,
Yep.
which is now
disbanded.
But there's still obviously a drug focused area of the Guam Police Department.
Yeah, there are groups that when these kind of crimes commit, they are specifically trained and tasked to handle just
sure,
that.
but I really cannot recall that within the past 8 months, right, in this current administration, if we've seen a drug bust of ample magnitude, right? There have been some drug arrests, but those seem to have come off the heels of serendipity, like, hey, we arrested you for driving with a broken taillight, and oh, hey, how come you got this pipe in the back of your car, and that leads to a bigger...
Oh gosh, if you do a search on KUM.com, you'll find so many stories about that. It's
I mean,
routine
it's
traffic pullover. They went in there, they discovered drug paraphernalia, they made an arrest for drugs.
So what do you think the administration has to do, or GPD in general, with their limited workforce, right? What can they do to start combating that problem better, and what can we do in the community to, help support the war on drugs, right? Like it really, like, it shocks me to see that.
Because remember the previous
something like
administration.
Youth for Youth doesn't have the same type of following and community support. Like,
that's
it's
interesting.
A prevention and educational.
When you were talking about that, when you were in Youth for Youth, you said it was specifically. I mean, I've always known it's to give kids a alternative path to go on,
Sure.
so that they don't wind up doing drugs and everything like that. But when I knew youth, there was Youth for Youth, there was the DECA Club, there were all these different organizations, and the specific intent was to give kids positive outlets and opportunities. I mean, they talked a little bit about the drug thing, but it wasn't almost like Scared Straight, or it wasn't like Tough Love. They just said, hey, we live on a tropical island. You've got all these people who are really, really cool. Everybody gets along. Make use of the resources that you have, because there's so many amazing things you can do in this community. Why do you have to turn, to drugs?
I don't, like, we all know drugs are bad, right? I mean, like, we're not living in an age now where all of a sudden we're accepting the use of crystal meth as recreational, right? Like, I feel like, man, I don't know, growing up, like, drugs were, like, they're bad. You gotta stay away from this type of stuff. And I just feel like now the society as a whole, like, maybe you recognize that there's drug use, but it seems like so many more of us are just willing to sit on the side and just be like, oh, well, he uses it, or whatever. Like,
Again, that's someone else's problem.
Yeah, and that's just a weird kind of, it's just something to think.
So tying in kind of like the crime angle, if you don't mind,
Sure.
if you don't mind sharing with our Facebook Live community, because I'm going to, have you ever been a victim of crime in recent history? Because I have.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I was living in Tumon at the time. I lived in Tumon for 11 years, and I was a victim of crime in the span of 7 months. I was a victim of crime 3 times, and through the help of GPD, they discovered that all 3 times it had to do like with drugs. And this is in Tumon, and I'm not being narcissistic by saying this, but Tumon is supposed to be Guam's playground. The places where crime shouldn't happen, because we cater so much to the tourists and we make it this wonderful place to live. But my car got broken into twice in 10 days, and my apartment, which was very modest, just got broken into, and they just said it was just one of those things where it was just for drugs.
Luckily for me, I've never had anyone break into my house recently, but I've had family members whose houses have been broken into multiple times, or even while they were home. Asha,
5 times?
5 times.
She was saying, she just said 5.
When I was like middle school to high school.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
But I mean, like, it's crazy. And how many, like, just spitballing here, how many of those did they ever catch the culprit, right?
Never.
So look, the clearance rate among the 3 of us right now is 0%.
Okay,
You know what I'm saying?
I want to draw on something that the judge, again, when I've interviewed him, he said before, like, with the problem, and it's not just crystal meth, right? When they talk about like the opioids, because opioids, like, the problem they have in the States with opioids is well established too, is if people are looking for opioids, if you're addicted to that, they say if you can break into somebody's house, they don't go looking for the safe, they don't go looking for your expensive china or your jewelry and everything like that, they're going straight to your medicine cabinet,
I guess.
and they're
I
looking
don't-
specifically for that.
I mean, I don't know. That's not true. That is not the case in mine because money and valuables, pets have been stolen from these properties,
That's
which
crazy.
to me is wild. Like who's gonna steal some cats? That's dirty. That's dirty. Go in someone's house, steal their pets. That's wild. And then the money, like I guess money I can like understand. I'm not saying it's justifiable, but like I can understand why you take money and goods like jewelry. That's it's tough. But you take someone's pets. Like what are you gonna do? Are you gonna give a pet love that their owners don't already give? Let's be honest. Anyway, that's a different topic. We're moving off center a little bit. We got a couple.
Oh, there is Jess Mendiola.
Yeah, so we're talking a little bit about Jess's story.
Happy day, Jess. Thanks again for sharing your story with us. That is not easy to do. What Jess did.
Yeah.
He is using his. While Ken reads these comments, he's gonna prep those. I just want to say that I've been doing this like a long time. Jess opening up his heart, sharing his story, which can be, it's very, very traumatic to actually use his experience and to use the pain, and he even said, the humiliation. He lost years with his children. He missed out on several events. To actually share that with people as a means of helping, and for him redemption, and to actually have people not experience what he had to go through, that's incredibly big of him.
Yeah, and Jess's story was very touching, and I think he had a lot of insight and really optimistic view to really help people. And it's better than you and me because we're not users or recovering users or whatnot, so we kind of really empathize with that situation. You know what I mean? Like we haven't been in that situation. So
We're just two guys that work in the news
yeah,
industry who are just
I'm
sitting here speculating.
spitballing from the outside. I'm not in there to tell you like how it is, right? But Jesse's been through that walk, right? And we will talk a little bit about his his interview. But before we get into that, I'm just going to read a couple good comments we have coming in here. Debbie Davis.
Hey, Debbie.
Saying best thing to do is go after drug dealers. Don't be afraid to turn someone in for selling and distributing drugs to people. I've turned my own family members for dealing. They know I did. Not afraid to do it. We have a couple people here reaching out.
You know what, though? I would say that's very, very sound advice. That's also for a lot of people here in our community, which is so tightly knit, and everybody knows everybody. That's easier said than done.
We got Elizabeth.
That's a really tough thing to do.
We got Elizabeth Gumatap out here in the chat saying it hurts when I'm told to mind my business, so we're next. You reach out to us. You can reach out to us here. You can reach out to Jess Mendiola. He's always willing to give help and advice and some kind of support.
He told everybody, send him friend requests. Reach out to him on Messenger.
And, I think, hey, I don't know what you're going through right now, but, there's an open ear to talk to. Like, if you really feel alone, you don't have someone to talk to, you can definitely talk to us too. You can message us. We're really cool. And then,
Kind of cool.
if not, you want to talk to a cooler guy, you definitely talk to Jess Mendiola.
Because like you said, he's been to the bottom of the abyss and he's come back. And he wants to tell people that,
Definitely. We got
you can do it.
Bill Cruz here saying, we were raised also to believe marijuana also was a bad drug, and look at where we stand now with marijuana. That's true. It's true to some extent, but I think like when we talk about a drug like crystal methamphetamine, there is a clear discourse and change in the physiology and the mental capacity of someone who's been a long-time user of ice. And I think it goes without saying that the use of ice is undebatably bad. There's a drug that does not further your development as a human being, does not further your relationships with people. There's a huge addiction. There's more than just the physical breakdown of you as a human, but also the mental, your mental understanding, your mental strength, and the sociological impact and harm it can do with you and your relationships with other members of your family or friends or just people in public. So
well, here's the thing. Like,
I mean, this is not like something like 20 years from now we're going to be like, hey guys, you know what? We've been talking about ice the wrong way. We are going to legalize ice. I think there's no benefit for it. 100%.
I don't believe there are.
I'll go on the record.
No one's ever said there are any
You know.
medicinal benefits of it, like
Sure.
they found with marijuana. Okay, in the 80s, again, from my generation, we had the Just Say No campaign and the Say No to Drugs, nationwide advertising campaign. the whole thing about, this is your brain. If you guys haven't seen it, look it up on YouTube, if you youngsters.
Oh yeah, that was.
This is your brain, and then it would have like the eggs. Boom, they put it into the pan. This is your brain on drugs. For people my age, that made a huge impact. Simple, succinct, and incredibly alarming.
But oddly enough, those commercials were made with marijuana and cocaine at the forefront of what that analogy was supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
The fried eggs in the pan. And then they changed it. They have like an updated version with ice. And then
Do they have an
They
updated?
put
Oh,
the
I didn't even
eggs,
know that.
but then they like throw stuff in there and they slam it around the room. I
Oh,
think it's
so-
like Natalie Portman going wild on that. I gotta find that. Maybe we'll link that in there. But Jesse Mendiola, who we're going to talk about right now, he said it's extremely difficult because you ask for their suffering all the while you continue to suffer. The harsh reality is we must not enable their behavior and provide some much more needed tough love. We got to do Sabrina got to do an interview with Sergeant Paul Tapau, as well as Jess Mendiola. And Jess Mendiola has a wonderful story that you can find from yesterday's starting lineup, the crime time. Talked for 35 minutes about his story as a former addict and on his road back to recovery, and how he is taking upon himself to also be a voice to help other people looking to recover from that road. And it's definitely a hard road, very touching story, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, again, like the reason why I brought up that the Just Say No campaign was when I was a kid. There would be police officers, there would be healthcare practitioners that would come into school and talk to us, and they would always say the big case study would always say, "There's no other way that we can use to describe what drugs do to you than if you steal from your own parents."
Yeah. Okay.
It's kind of tame like these days when everybody puts everything out there, but in the 80s, for my generation, and everybody we sat back and we were like, wow, and they would show like a video of some kid sneaking into his mom's room, stealing money from her purse.
Oh my gosh, this is so, I don't want to say it's funny, but it is just so coincidental because we got Nate Horn, he's quoting the commercial, "You all right? I learned it by watching you."
That was the marijuana one. Yeah, remember?
So I do think
Remember that? No, the kid was rocking out in his room on his headphones.
dad
Pre Beats. This wasn't like Beats by Dre, right? But he's over there, and the kid's got he's got like a
Cigarettes,
cigar
right?
box.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
and he's got like a bunch of joints and the dad box in. He's like, oh no, he's just listening to music, and the dad comes in and he's got the box of like drugs, and he's like, what is this? Who
Is
taught
it
you how to
drugs
do
or cigarettes?
No, it was joints.
Oh, okay.
And then he goes, "Who taught you how to do this stuff?" And then the kid just like he's got tears. He's like, "You all right?" I learned, and I think that won so many different advertising awards. But again, for me, my generation, that was a huge moment, and it made such a big impact. And then the tagline of the ad was, "Children who do drugs have parents who do drugs."
Is that what
Oh
it
no,
is?
parents who do drugs have children who do drugs.
Asha, how long are we in this podcast? 33. Okay, we're going a little overboard, and we don't want to go too deep into this. But just to close this off, I want to ask a question to everyone at home. Like, okay, we know. I feel like everyone is chatting. Everyone's like, there is a growing epidemic on Guam. Like, so what do we do? Is it toss ideas in the comments. Let us know what we can do as civilians to kind of help with the war against drugs, or what you expect the government or the administration to kind of do to help win this war, right? And we can always just blame the police and their inefficiencies as solving these crimes or apprehending drug dealers, but these guys are working with the really limited workforce. Only 4 patrol officers for every precinct, and a precinct covers more than a village sometimes.
And that's what we've learned on our live streams.
We learned that on
4
our Crime Watch
officers.
live stream. So
And one of them has to man the desk. One of them is the dispatch, like the desk watch officer, right? 2 patrolmen who actually go out and respond to all types of calls.
3 people patrolling Dedito
And the watch command.
That is Dedito and Jigo is
Yeah.
that's an intimidating, daunting task.
Yeah.
So do let us know what you think. What we need to do to start winning this war on drugs. Jesse is in the chat. If you are looking for someone to voice, maybe you don't feel comfortable sending messages about drug use to KOAM News, Facebook. So if you want to reach out to someone confidentially, you can. Jesse Mendiola is in the chat.
Can we add on a positive note though?
Sure.
Because Jess has this very wonderful comment, and kind of like Jess has top fan status now.
Oh, there you go.
Hey, thank you, Jess. Thank you for commenting on ours. So Jess actually adds, and we'll end with this. He says, I have stolen from my folks and siblings, but they never gave up on me. The love they had for me powered me through the darkness until I soon found the light within myself. And once I began to shine, I found my way.
You know what? There's no better way to end
Love.
the podcast. Like, there's nothing you and I can say, so we're just going to end it here. Thank you for watching TrendSpotting. You can catch us next week, same time, Thursday at noon. We'll see you then.